Greetings, wonderful people. It's me, Shimon, and welcome back to yet another tech podcast. Today, I'm being joined by a great community builder, writer, and a stand up comedian. Well, without any further ado, it's none other than Laura Howe. We have an assortment of topics today, so we'll be discussing about community management, the process of writing a book, and much, much more. So, pull up your masks, strap in, and get ready, for this is going to be a great ride. But before we go any further, I'd like to extend my utmost gratitude to each and every one of you for your immense support. I know 2021 has been quite an unprecedented year so far, and we've been facing loss and hardships every single day. And do not forget, you're not alone, and we're all in this together. I know this isn't much, but I really hope that this podcast gives you a brief respite. On that note, let's begin. All right, so for the uninitiated, why don't you tell us who you are? Just a quick little introduction.
Okay, my name is Laura Howe. I am known on the internet as Lamiki on Twitter, Cheeky Lamiki on the Instagram. So that's an alias that I go by. Some of my friends from a certain time period of my life like to call me Lambs, which I adore. So other than my internet fame, which doesn't really exist, I am global community builder is something that we like to call me professionally. That's what pays the bills, which basically means I help bring mad raving fans closer to the brands that they love and help build kind of what I call a hug in between the brand and the end users or the consumers. And then when I'm not schlepping my credentials for money, I am also a writer, an amateur stand-up comedian, world traveler, collecting air miles, trying to work my way to 1 million. And I also like to travel and move around the world with my cat.
That's awesome. So I have another very traditional question as always, which people
Okay.
love to hear. Like, what's your current daily driver in terms of the device that you use? Like your phone or
Oh,
something?
okay. I do love this question only because of the world that we met in. So my current daily driver is a Google Pixel 4 XL.
Amazing.
It's a beautiful full device. I definitely ever since when I joined. So I've been my personal daily driver has been Android ever since HTC days, so over 8 years. And I stuck with it. When I left HTC and I got a job at a different company where they gave me a work phone, and I got to be one of those really cool people who had an international life with like 2 cell phones. Oh my God, it was amazing. So I remember when I was getting that job and I got an email from HR that was like, okay, what device do you want? And the options were an iPhone or a Samsung. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, Jesus. Um, like, seriously. So I went for iPhone, which was actually really fun because from just keeping up with tech in the relationship that I have with it, it was nice to have experience on both operating systems.
Yeah, it's refreshing. And I know that fanboys love to, battle it out between the two factions, so as to
Yeah,
say. But what I think is, if something works out for you and is best for you, it's fine. It's no need to, shame one or the other. That's cool. All cool there.
totally. I totally agree with you. And what was fun during that
And
time?
here's my Pixel
Oh,
3a.
oh my God, that's so cute.
Yeah, it's cute.
Look at you going. Look at you going without a case and without protection, Shimon.
Yeah, I
You'd
never
like to
use
live life in a
cases.
danger.
Yeah.
I what am I using? I'm using the Spigen just a shell because I started to use
And a
the
pop socket.
pop-ups.
Hmm.
Pop socket, yeah.
Does that really help though?
This is my first. Sort of. So what got me onto the pop socket, or at least the ring thing, was when I was in Japan and I was on iPhone. I mean, rings are just everywhere in Japan, which makes sense. I mean, you're using it crammed together in the metro, and basically there's bumps, there's whatever, people can fall. So I loved using the ring, but I could never have a case where the ring would stick. So I
Hmm.
started to buy a cheap ass case that was connected with the ring, and I loved it. I wore it like jewelry. Like I would twist it around my hand or whatever, and it was kind of like a party trick, and people were always like, oh wow, what are you doing with your phone? You just don't care, whatever. I'm like, I have, knock on wood, a very good relationship with phones. There was only a 1 3 month period around when the oh God, what was the name of that phone? The HTC A something or other.
A9?
Yeah, when the A9 came out, I broke 3 of those in like a course of 2 months.
You
It's
know
a
what?
disaster.
The only I have broken A9 as well.
Hmm. Oh, what's your story? I've got, I
Um,
guess.
I think I was coming back from somewhere. I was on a cemented road, and
Mhm.
the good old days when we used to have wired earphones. Remember those?
What?
So yeah, it was connected, and the phone was in my pocket, and somehow it fell, but I caught the wire. But
Mm.
since I caught it, it just got disconnected, and it fell face flat on the cemented road, so it cracked.
The A9 was a beautiful phone for breakage.
Yes.
So I broke the first one at the A9 launch. So when
Mm.
HTC launched it with Title X, and it was in the arena as we were leaving the venue, and I just taken all of the photos that were being used on social with my A9, and I was walking up the stairs, and I missed my blazer pocket, and it fell onto the concrete steps of the stadium, and it was just like cool, okay, phone launch day when I could finally show it out of NDA, and it's broken. Uh, the, the second time was New
Fun.
Year's Eve that year, where I was waiting in line for the restroom, and it was at some club, and I just like it slipped out of my hand and skid on the floor, and so that was a good opportunity to stop drunk texting as well. Um,
Been there, done that. Yes.
yeah, yeah, and then the last one was just a glitch, because of course they were all pre-production models. The fun days.
So, since you're telling about building global communities and all, so I would love to
Mhm.
hear about what's your thought process? Like when you come on board and say like, hey, you're supposed to build a community, how do you approach the whole process of building a real community of fans and people, or as you call it, advocates?
Yes, that's my favorite word. So I've had experience building brands for tech companies, for consumer brand FMCGs, fast-moving consumer goods. So
Mm.
stuff you buy very quickly, and then also a variety of some artists. So kind of where it's been certain personalities, right?
Mm.
So where I really come into play and where I like to do the magic is um, coming into a community that already has kind of a base,
Mhm.
right? So I like to be, I consider myself more of a builder versus a founder. So a lot of times when I work with brands, so the difference between a founder is a founder
Mhm.
obviously is someone who creates something out of nothing,
Correct.
is the big ideas person,
Mhm.
right?
Correct. Correct.
And those people are visionaries, right? Because they just
Mhm.
spell out the North Star, where are we going, right? But they don't necessarily know the how, or they're not necessarily good at the how. They might be the ones who are like, see the opportunity, jumping on it, bringing people together for how it's done. I like my name how am really good in how it's done.
Mhm.
So like give me a North Star, give me a roadmap, and I can make shit happen, so to
Mhm.
speak.
That's, I'm absolutely
That's
going
what I
to
like.
pitch it to you each and every single time. You need a podcast of your own called How Did This Happen or something with that, like how shit is done. Please, you need to make that happen.
It's so funny. So this is a tangent since we're already off topic. So
I love it.
as you know, I changed my name a
Hmm.
couple of years ago
Hmm.
from a divorce, and so my internet persona changed as well. Not quite persona. No, the persona is the same, but at least my legal name. So it's a very much a challenge to get a new Gmail address when you change your name. That's an essay in a book that I'm writing. That's basically like why women specifically, but also people should never change their name. Mainly, case in point, Gmail addresses. Anyway, so I was trying to find a new Gmail address, and I actually did snag "How is Laura Howe," um, which is
Nice.
actually pretty savvy.
Hmm.
And then I misspelled it, so I have both versions.
Nice. Amazing.
Since we're on the name game, it's actually fun because since I missed the main, 10 years of my life meeting people and building up a professional network with my current name. With Laura Howe, I had no idea that Howe is actually quite a difficult name to pronounce in other regions of the world.
Oh, that's
So
that's very interesting. I thought my name was difficult.
it might be. It might be.
Hmm.
So I guess for your listeners, so I'm American. I spent 30 years of my life living in the Seattle area, Pacific Northwest of the US. And then almost 5 years ago, I moved abroad for the first time, first to Switzerland, which is a French speaking country. And then I moved to Japan, which is a Japanese speaking country. And now I'm back in Switzerland. So it's really fun because I've been working in a multinational corporation where everybody has very different names. And so nobody knows how to spell anybody's name. It's like so freeing, right? So I had the team assistant actually one day asked me because she wanted to know how to pronounce my name. And she was very, very succinct on it. She was like, and she was sneaky how she did it. She was like, Laura, um, how do you pronounce your surname? Because in French, and I don't really know French, I only know how to order beer and say thank you and hello, which
Yeah,
confuses
the
a lot of people.
essentials, of course. Yeah.
Exactly. So in French, how would be pronounced "au"? So it's very confusing, and like how you say a W to spell it is like double O or something like that. So it was
Mhm.
very cute. So then my response to her question, how do you pronounce your name, is how do you mean? And then that just created a laughter. So yeah. And then in Asian countries or East Asian countries, how seems to be pronounced Howie. For whatever reason, they pronounce the E at the end. So it's been an interesting thing just to learn. Like I thought I had a very generic, like no frills English name. But even Laura, like in French, it's Laura. Spanish is Laura. Japanese, it's Laura. It's so fun. It's so fun. So back to your original question about building communities, because
Yes.
that's how
Yeah.
I got on that tangent. Um,
Yeah.
okay, so really at the start of it, so when I like to come in and work with people or brands as far as like building their audience, because that is what a community is. It's the people who care about you. It's like your followers, from Shimon on Twitter, and then also another tech podcast. Really, what I'd like to do is kind of first get a lay of the land and figure out who are the existing people and kind of what are they passionate about, what do they care, how do they respond, right? Because it's kind of like it's basics in getting to know like a friend or a person, or you're dating somebody, right? You got to figure out what are their interests, right, before I start shoving a bunch of new stuff on top of it. So that's the first thing.
So basically, going all Sherlock on people. So,
Sherlock, a little bit, yeah. There's different depths for sure to go on, because then it's
yeah.
I try to keep top line,
Yeah.
because also, when it comes to working in social media, which is the communities that I build are online.
Mhm.
So they're usually owned communities, and usually the communication comes through social, right?
Mhm.
There's a fine line between being like knowing your audience and also being creepy,
Mhm.
right? And so I don't quite want to go full creepy, like retargeted ad style in the beginning,
Mhm.
because the whole goal with building a community is to create this like individual connection that's technically one to many. So the brand or the persona to like, hundreds, thousands, millions of people, that feels genuine and authentic in a
Mhm.
way where it feels like I am talking directly to you.
Correct.
So in that way, kind of the tenets of, so part of it is like audience understanding of who's there, right? And then like, where do you want to go? So it depends on like the brand that I'm working with. Like, I was currently one of my projects right now is I'm working with a friend of mine's startup, and so she's got an organizing business and a sustainability brand. And so her thing is, right now where she's at is really much local, because it's local, building the client base and things like that, but like she's got a long-term plan as far as the relationship that people have with their stuff, and how like all of your stuff, you treasure it for a moment and then you let it go. But it's not just like donating and throw it away, but it's like, where can you give it almost like a second life? So she's got like this big vision. So she's a founder, right?
Mhm.
So I've got her master plan.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, where she's at right now is like kind of in that like needing to be found, and people need to understand like what her business is all about, and also her as a founder, right? So we're kind of working on kind of her executive platform as well. But then where she wants to go is something bigger. So then kind of it's a combination when it comes to building that community of, okay, is like, who are the people that need to be reached now, and kind of how can you slowly through content and conversations, and also other people that you connect with, whether it's influencers or other thought leaders, other brands, where can you help go there farther, right?
So since you like go through people who you think like are
Mhm.
possible additions to the community, my baseline question being, are there any specific red flags which you look for when you're building a community?
Okay. Well, it depends on what level, right? Because if it's just like numbers, like I just want listeners and audience, it can be. I mean, I always try to look for things that are mean that this person's a human, right?
Authentic,
Like, there's no way to
basically.
know who's, yeah, exactly, authentic, because the brands that I build are very much that genuine human connection, right? And especially that emotional connection. I think that's what I was trying to remember what to say earlier. So definitely. through my experience working on Twitter, like I could definitely tell kind of who's a bot, who's not. The challenge now is that there's because a lot of social networks, or not necessarily social networks, but there's a big movement to like privacy on the internet, is that there's a lot of people who use aliases. And I remember that like from 10 years ago, like it would annoy me if it wasn't someone's real name or someone's face. But like, I learned that a lot when I was building communities in Japan. Like in Japan, like nobody shows their faces. And like
Interesting.
yeah, there was actually technology that we were working on to develop as a way to like, can we identify somebody's age and passions based on what they tweet and their profile photo and whatnot? And that worked in Western countries when most people show their faces, but
Correct.
in countries like Japan, where that was one of the audience experiments, it might be a close-up photo of like their matcha tea, so it's like really hard to tell like who is this person. And so that's another thing too, just to understand like what are the different nuances based on different cultures and countries that your audiences are in.
Okay, that's pretty insightful. And what about the green flags? Like you said, being
Mm.
authentic is one. Are there any certain parameters that you look out for? Having good community
Yeah,
members, like what do you look for in them?
yeah. So this one's super easy, and we could trademark it, but it wasn't my original idea. Um, so if anyone outwardly on their own organically talks about you and your brand, or a topic that's similar at HTC. Well, since it's no longer there, when we were recruiting for Elevate, we had search terms for just HTC plus love.
Hmm.
And so that was a lot of ways that we recruited community members, especially since we were looking for advocates and people who talked openly about the brand, because that was one of the goals of that community. So honestly, anybody who talks organically about a brand is definitely a green flag, or like somebody who like I want to bring into my community that I'm
Hmm.
building.
That's fantastic. I mean, it was a fun time while it lasted, wasn't it?
I know. Rest in peace.
Yeah, good memories.
Yeah, I was so sad when the news came out about Elevate being pulled down in 2019,
Oof.
January, because that was a lot. I was still subscribing to Google alerts on Elevate just so
Yeah.
I could keep tabs on it. And so it was started with, "Hey, the site's down," and then what do we do? And I was like, "Oh, I was so sad for a couple of days there." Last year was 2019. It was founded in 2012, so it was a 7-year run, which all communities shift and change. I mean, it's like
Yes.
how Facebook as a platform is changing, right?
Hmm.
Which is part of like fascinating to me, is
Yes,
I
it is.
love to see like what's popular, what's not, how things have shifted. Going back to when you were talking about like what's a red flag with people, and like how people use Twitter now, because like there's so much more adoption and there's so many
Mhm.
more like lurkers on Twitter versus people who are actually like consuming content. But it's just how things have shifted, or like on Facebook, not a lot of people are like creating content on there. um,
Wait, people still use Facebook?
I just got a message on my wall over the weekend from my grandpa saying he missed my post. So yeah. So I'm
Oh
definitely
well.
like 100% like Jen's like a teenager now who like I don't post on Facebook because except to talk to my grandpa. Yeah, I have certain people who are connected now to Google, so that's cool. I've been enjoying the Google alert saying, "Hey, do you want to plan something for somebody's birthday?" I'm like, "It's a pandemic, Google. Read the room." Like,
Right. Talking about reading the room, I see a lot of
mm,
books behind you, and there's a perfect segue to you being a writer. Could
mm.
you please tell me how is the experience of writing something on your own? What are you working on currently? So smooth, damn.
Okay. Sorry, I'm so sorry. That laugh was more just me and how to position. It's funny. I was working on my project, my book, right before this call, so that's also part of the energy.
All right, let's take a quick coffee break. Talking about which, now you can literally buy me one. Yeah, just check out the link in the description. Not only can you support the podcast, but also opt for a membership which provides additional benefits. What kind of benefits, you might ask? Well, you get access to a members only Discord where we can game together with like minded individuals. You might even recognize some familiar faces out there. You'll also get extra members only content and you get to suggest guests and topics. And it's an ever growing list of benefits. So if you like what you hear, just head over to buymeacoffee.com/YATP. Yeah, it's that simple. Pick your poison and voila, you're done. And now that the coffee break is over, let's resume with the episode.
Okay, so little known fact about me that now, so you get this exclusive story.
Oof.
Um, I have been a writer my entire life. That's been my passion point. Um, I used to write stories and spiral bound notebooks, kind of like Harriet the Spy at recess, except they were fiction. And I remember like fellow students used to, or like some of my friends would come look at like the stories I was writing, and I would use like, a name of a boy in class, like Tyler, because that was like what three of them were named. She's like, "Oh, you have a crush on Tyler." I was like, "No, this is a story. Like, go away," right? So it's just something that I've always done in secret, right? And I like went to grad school for book publishing, actually.
Ooh.
But then, yeah, it was something that like through imposter syndrome of being 20 and like in creative writing classes and not knowing, like it was just something I was interested in, but not something where I was like, what do I want to do with life? So I kind of put that on a shelf. My life prior to getting into social media, I did work in publishing, but then there was a recession, so I got laid off and was like, what do I do now? And so that's actually how I found community management social, was that I was working for a company at the time that I was in field sales, which is a horrible job for my personality, and especially a horrible job during a recession because sales
Hmm.
in, something like journals are not very big. So anyway, we were a company that was basically a competitor to Moleskine. So, but we were so, and I was being like, I was managing the field sales reps who were then going to the store accounts, who were then going to the end customer. So I was like so many degrees separation from like our end user. And so I was hearing third, fourth degree about what the customers thought about our products and how amazing they were and different ideas. And I was like, there is something here, right? And this was in 2007, 2008. So before like Facebook had a business profile presence. And I was like, okay, there's got to be something that out there as far as like people's relationship, somewhere to like connect with the end users, the consumers in some way. And so I was actually went to a networking event, social media club event. That was something that was big back in the around the eights to the 11s. And there
Remember the
was
good times when we could meet in public?
exactly. And like, and there was this new thing called social media, and people were like, how do we figure this out? And it was like a bunch of speakers were coming together and just like using like, it was a really cool like testing ground, right? So I went to this one talk, and the speaker there was talking about communities for brands. And so like his platform was wiki communities. I was like, oh my God, what is this? Like there's something here. So like I actually built on this pitch. And like the day after I was going to go up to my boss and like kind of have a Jerry Maguire moment of like, this is what we need to do, right? Our sales are falling, but we've got these consumers out there who just love our product. We can build something. I want to figure it out, right? The day I walked into the office was the day that I got, hey, we are laying you off notice. I was like, okay. So that ended my venture in publishing for a while. And then I got to play with communities, which has been a lot of fun. But kind of my relationship with writing has something that's always been there. And I kind of knew that I would come back to it because it's like one of those things that you do when you're a kid or when you're little that you're just like, it's your art. But it just wasn't time, right? I was busy like trying to earn a living and pay my rent and whatever and traveling the world. So all sorts of good things. So the benefit is I think I started, and I was blogging for a bit around like 2012, a lot around 2012, but was trying to figure out what my passion was. So I kind of got into it. I got back into my relationship with writing, actually restarted about a year and a half ago, I say, when I was talking to a friend of mine here in Switzerland. And I was telling her I wanted to get back into writing. And she actually is a formally trained comedian, stand-up comedian, and has a theater background. And so she had a number of people here in Switzerland who wanted to learn how to do stand-up comedy. They're like, it's always been my dream. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. Like, if anything, it'll get me into a relationship with writing. So she designed
I
this.
mean, I mean, it fits you as well.
Thanks. I also do it sitting down. Um, we had
Yeah.
a joke. So here's a side note. When I was working at HTC, I would say random comments during meetings, like board meetings, like with our CEO in the room. Um, and so my boss at the time, F, used to joke about it, how I would do stand up in meetings. And I was like, yes, that's true. Um, yeah, there was one time actually I made a joke when we were trying to plan how to launch the HTC Vive. And so we were in this big long day meeting with the CEO at the time, Cher Wang. And we were talking about like, what do we, some joke about they wanted to do a 24-hour live stream, like back before that was a thing. And I was like, what are we going to do for 24 hours with content? And I was like, yeah, and at 2 a.m. we can play board games. And I don't know, some joke like that. And then F just gave me a death stare, and Cher actually just like looked at me in the face. She's like, that is not funny, Laura. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to back away slowly. So yeah, so thank you for that compliment about it. Sounds like it fits. Yeah, so we were in this super intensive, amazing 15-week stand-up writing workshop. And so my dear friend Kate, you've seen her on the internet with me, Cutie Pie Kate.
Yeah.
She basically spent half of that teaching us everything she knows about how to write jokes, how to structure them, all this stuff. And then the other half was on performance. And so then at the end of it, we had each of us, there were three of us, we had a 5-minute set. And then we performed at an open mic in Geneva, Switzerland.
Mhm.
And that was the most incredible day. I didn't even have it was a very hard process for me, for a writing process, because it's the first time I wrote anything outside of stuff for work or for the internet or for a business or like for a blog, since like college. So like, honestly, most of the times, writing is really hard and it's super vulnerable for me. So it's very interesting that it's something that I'm very into and passionate about, because like we'd meet every week and we'd have assignments, and then the whole thing was like, bring what you wrote. And the best piece of rule that Kate had for our group was that do not do any explanations for it. Meaning, pitch your joke as if it's the best joke you've ever written.
Interesting.
Which I love it. Like, if the truth is that, you just wrote it on a napkin at the bus stop on your way over, don't say it. It's like, here's my stuff. Right. So it like helps build this confidence. It takes out any like, any context that you might have hearing it. So you're just like, okay, here's the best joke in the world. Right. And then we also had frameworks on how to give feedback. And a lot of it was like, we sat there with a highlighter anytime somebody joked or laughed at anything we wrote it. Yeah, so most of the sessions, honestly, I was reading my jokes through tears, because like because it was super vulnerable. It is really scary to like share writing. It is so scary. Yeah. And a lot of what I was writing, it was not jokes, because that's not my format. I'm long form narrative. I'm stories. And so having to write something super succinct, as you can tell by our conversation, I'm not very good with succinct. So it's hard. But then like about 2 or 3 weeks before it was going to be our session, I was like, okay, I'm committing to it. Let's do it. It was me and these two other newbies. I was doing dishes and I was working on like my bits, just like rehearsing it. And all of a sudden, like I had it all memorized, and it was this magic moment. I was like, oh, it was so cool. One of my best friends from the US, decided 2 weeks in advance to jump on a plane and come out and be there for me for my first stand-up. She was like, I feel like this is a huge moment in your life.
That's wonderful.
So it was amazing. And delivering it was just absolutely incredible, because like, there's something like, I have given presentations, I've given talks with Madonna mics in front of 500 people on stage, usually swallowing those nerves and stuff, but I've never shared my writing and my craft with people. And it was incredible. It was 40 people in a basement back when you could be shoulder to shoulder to people. And I had this weird, crazy out of body experience where the front half of my body was in the room delivering and like, listening to the laughs, trying to breathe, watching, my best friend in one corner. I had about 10 people that went to Geneva from Lausanne, which was 45 minutes, which is not a normal thing in Europe, right? To like come see my stuff just because I told them about it. One of my friends, she like picked up 4 other people in her way and like spent 2 hours in traffic. I was like, these people showed up for me.
Wow.
Holy fuck, right? So half of it was delivering my stuff and just memorize. It was muscle memory. It was absolutely incredible. And then the other half of my body was like physicalness. It was like, it was noticing these small tremors in my body. It was like, there's this trick where like you have to hold the mic up to your chin so that it stays to your mouth. Because if you like move your mouth away from the microphone, nobody can hear your jokes. Nobody can laugh. The challenge
Quite
is
literally.
exactly what you're in. Exactly. Right. So if that was taped to your face, it would be easier. Your mic, I mean, for people who cannot see.
True.
But the problem is that a lot of comedians are men, and they have this thing called facial hair, right?
Oof.
So facial hair, no. It's great. Facial hair to a microphone is like Velcro. It helps keep the microphone on, right? As a woman without facial hair and with makeup and sweaty skin, a microphone in my chin slips. So like half the time while I'm like trying to tell these jokes, I'm just trying to like keep this microphone glued to my chin that keeps flipping, right? Oh my God, it was so funny. Like, so this is so much that's happening in the moment, as also I'm trying to recall 5 minutes of content and letting people pause for jokes. Oh my God. So one of the best highs in my life was finishing that. And then last fall, I did 4 more shows before the pandemic hit, one of which was a private show. So I was booked for my first ever private corporate
Fancy.
gig.
That's fancy.
So fucking fancy. And it was for actually a team at the company that I used to work for. And it was their ethics and compliance team.
Ah, great. I can already see where this is going, but nice.
It was amazing, and it was 20 minutes. I didn't fully script it. I did some of my existing content and some of the jokes also that were more inside jokes about the company. So talking about executives and whatnot. And the best part about that is like what's challenging in comedy is like it's really challenging to tell jokes about your workplace at a club because like there's so much contextual inside jokes, right? But when you're telling it to a room full of, well, there was 20 people, international, of lawyers, they understand everything. So it was so fun. It was so much fun. And then afterwards, the best part. So like I basically it was their like end of year holiday party, and I was the talent. And basically the VP of ethics and compliance wanted to try something new because she's a somebody who shakes things up. And so they booked me as a surprise guest, which was fun. And afterwards, one of the ethics compliance officers for that oversaw my office came up to me, shook his hand, introduced himself. And he was like, okay, hi, Laura. Here's my name. If you have any ethics compliance issues, I'm your guy. I was like, thank you. I am paid an immunity here, so I can do what I want. It was so much fun because it's just like, I mean, the things with comedy is that like and writing in general is that like, it's scary as shit. But it's like this bravery of going up there. And it gave me this like, I mean, to be honest, like I said, comedy is not necessarily my forte, but everything in my life is funny to me. But I like to call it an entry drug. So it helped me start writing. And I always knew and felt that at some point in my life I would get back to writing. So I'm channeling, I was really inspired when I learned the background of Murakami and how he ran a bar in Japan for 10 years. And then he didn't start writing until he was 30. And now he's 80 and a prolific writer and like he's had this full other career. So I was like, okay, maybe in my 30s I'll get back to that. And I'm, 34 now. And so that's where that started with comedy. And the pandemic hit. And I've been going through a lot of, find my stuff and whatever instead of baking bread, basically I started writing the narrative side. So I really started because I've had this book idea in me for a number of years. And in November is when I really started, or in October, I guess I started like, okay, I need to actually put words to paper. So in November, I participated in NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month. So it's a big thing in the US, which
Okay.
basically the whole premise of that is to help people who have a book idea get over the fear of a blank page by
Interesting.
saying, okay, here's for the entire month of November, you have 30 days. Your goal is 50,000 words, period. Which really, it's 1,600. So 50,000 words is the size of the Hobbit. So the
Okay.
whole idea is that it's a start. It is your shitty first draft. It is the vomit first draft, depending on what book you're writing. The whole idea is not edit, just go and produce and put it out. And NaNoWriMo has a lovely website, nanowrimo.org, where literally you can track your like progress, and they have lovely graphs, and they tell you kind of like, when are you most creative, and they help you like shift your goal every day. So it was really great. So I committed to that. Through the help of one of my dear friends, she helped me kind of like structure, give me some ideas of like how to start, like have a list of topics. And then Kate and I were living together at the time. And so she also gave me the space of basically being like, have you written your words yet? And then I actually was very good I did tell some friends like, hey, I'm writing. So they checked in with me. Have you been writing? I was like, yes. And the magic of that was literally, I just got into a flow. For what I was writing, it only took about 2 hours a day to like meet it. And I have the most amazing run-on sentences in my life because it was like just pure writing, pure words. And it was magic for just starting, right? So that's the process that I'm at. And I actually just read my first manuscript last week. I finished it. I was very afraid to go back into it. So now I'm in the editing process, which is exciting, but also it's going to be a lot of work
That's
from
wonderful.
it.
So if you don't mind
Thanks.
sharing, what's the book all about?
Oh yeah. So that's the part where I'm like, don't quite have my press language for it yet, but we'll go for it. So okay. Um, it is on one hand, it's a lot of stories about people I've met since living abroad over the last 4 years. That is one version of the pitch. So basically, the book that I'm writing, the working title right now is called Arguments Against Marriage.
Hmm.
And it's a memoir about different adventures and experiences that I've had while I was married, mostly since I've been living abroad, and just like the random shenanigans that you get into as being not attached in a relationship, right? It's the stories of finding my crew of friends in Japan, of just a bunch of like lost soul expats. And we had, and just finally for the first time meeting a crew of people who like I could be myself with in all different ways and there was no judgment. And there's other things too. So that's what this book is, a work in progress, and where I was hesitating because like my initial idea was where this book was going to be has changed as I've written it. And actually, that working title of Arguments Against Marriage actually is only a couple of weeks old. So
Mhm.
even today, I was working through like the different stories and essays. I'm like, okay, how can we theme this and what does this really look like? Because it's
I guess that's the fun process, right? You write and evolve, iterate on that, and then land on something which aligns with your goal and your vision.
totally. And the vision has changed and shifted a lot because it's like it's really about this book is a book that I wish existed and I stumbled upon 5 years ago when I was going through this, even 15 years ago, when it was, it's
Mhm.
not so much like marriage is a very specific relationship model, but it's also something that is very much it's part of this mainstream narrative. Meet somebody, fall in love, be together forever, right? It's in every single movie archetype, and it requires a lot of work, and there is a lot of different nuances as far as like, is that the right path for you or not? So that's really what this book is about, and um, ideally a bit controversial. So that's another thing that I need to work through, as with being a writer and having your art out there is like, okay, this is what I'm all about, you know. Um, yeah, so that's the idea. It's a memoir. It's about stories and different themes relating to basically trying to challenge the status quo and the main narrative of life, which seems to be marriage is the best thing that you must achieve for. Da, da,
That's wonderful. I must. That's pretty insightful. Not going to lie.
da.
So I'm curious about the stand-up comedy scene. So in India,
Yeah.
of course, despite being the second most COVID cases in the world,
Oh no.
yeah, first is USA, second is India. So yeah, it's terrible, but we are managing. So
Mhm.
the point which I was coming to was
Mhm.
considering stand-up comedians cannot perform in public anymore. You know what they're doing
Yeah.
is they're performing on Zoom calls, and it's a paid
Hmm.
show, and doing it that way. So it's pretty interesting. Is that the same case over there as well?
Yeah. Yeah. It depends. I mean, so like my online network. So the world that I'm in comedy in Switzerland is English speaking expat community. So there are a number of English speaking comedians in Switzerland who are doing, Instagram lives, Zooms, things like that. Over the summer, Switzerland was able to open some events in person. So in certain regions where events were allowed, people could go in, but it was definitely reduced capacity and with masks. Yeah, so it's varied, but like that's definitely most of the comedians who I follow are usually US based, and so a lot of that is Zoom calls and things like that.
Interesting.
I have not done that just because I am such a newbie to comedy that, and also like I said, it's an entry, so I've been staying offline and writing my memoirs.
Well, if I may suggest, have you ever
Mhm.
considered, uploading some of your content on YouTube, perhaps on,
Yeah,
say, IGTV? Who knows? Because why not? Or do you want to save your content for offline spaces?
I at the moment right now I've decided not to do that. So not to build an online audience as a comedian. And part of that was just the journey that I've been in
Hmm.
for like, comedy was a testing ground for me.
Hmm.
And that is something that I get a lot out of it, but it's a lot of work on the front end. Like I said, like when I wrote my
Right.
jokes, I was crying, right? And now I'm working on this big, massive book project. So it's one of those things that like, that's definitely something that like, because I have this vision for this book of it actually like, you know, being published and whatnot. And because of that, like I will need to build a platform and an audience, and
Correct.
especially around me as a content. So that's part of stuff that I will definitely need to get back into.
I see how it'll be a conflict of interest, I guess.
Yeah, it's more just like it's energy output, right?
Mm,
Like where I'm putting my energy right now is to figure out these, all these random stories and things that happen in my life and how do I put in a theme to support a hypothesis, right? So it's not just navel gazing or like, stories of my life or inhaling Arctic weather.
mm,
Yeah, so it's definitely there's certain bits, like there is some stuff of my jokes, like they do exist on a private YouTube channel just for friends who wanted to see. But I've not released my jokes for public consumption. And part of it too is like testing and figuring it out. And like some of those jokes I have written into essays. It's really fun to write about your exes. Because then you own the story, you own the narrative. So that's definitely something that in the future potentially.
mhm.
But I need to once my manuscript has enough of a form, so I know like what are the little droplets that can go out, what essays can I pitch to other publications, so there's definitely a big part of speaking of community building that I will need to be doing for myself as a writer, which is exciting.
How tables have turned.
It's so fun. This project is so fun, to be honest, because like like I said, I went to grad school for book publishing. So like I've got the whole like how it's done already mapped out. Literally all I need is this manuscript. Like, the next is a book proposal, hiring an editor, then building a platform, and then working with agents and publishers, ideally, right, to shop it around. And then because of that, I will need an audience. So I will need a community. Da, da, da. I know all this stuff, but right now I need the goddamn book. I need the content. I mean, I could sell anything. I
Yeah.
could definitely build an audience right now for it, but it would, you have so much energy during the day.
I honestly cannot wait for the book.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, why not?
Thanks.
I'm really rooting for you. Like, I'm not just saying for the heck of it, but I'm genuinely excited and looking forward to it.
Thank you. It's gonna be good. And I have pitched it quietly to some very trusted friends and in different versions of that pitch. And
Mhm.
always the response is really good, which is fantastic. Like I think I don't know. Everybody's got imposter syndrome. Everybody thinks like, who am I to be this
Exactly.
authority to write this? And I think kind of in my past life, so definitely when I was in the US, I was hanging out with a lot more creatives. So a lot more people like me who were way more brilliant than me and doing much cooler shit. So of course it's easier to be like, I am shit. But definitely like my friends now are not so much in the creative space. So maybe that
Mhm.
helps with like people being in awe of you. It was like, oh,
Like,
I don't know how this is
what
going
do
to
we
come
throw
off,
at them? They're
but
like,
yeah,
this is amazing.
exactly. It's like, if you're a musician and all your friends are musicians, you're always comparing yourself to your friends. But
Mhm.
then, when you take yourself into a different community or a different world and people who like, are programmers and not musicians, then all of a sudden you're a god. Okay, that is putting a completely different context here, but kind of similar, right?
Mhm.
Um, it's like what happened to me when people heard about stand up, right? It was my first time. And then all of a sudden I was at like how I booked the private event was that I was at an after works drinks and people come up and they were like, Laura, we saw you did comedy. You did comedy. Hey, we need this for this. Like it was all networking. I was like, you guys haven't even seen a video. You don't even know if I'm funny, but okay. I mean, I don't know, there was just some confidence that happened from it, and that's part of it. So it's been really interesting too, as being more open and talking about writing, as you brought up,
Mhm.
because you know it from me talking a little bit about the process of writing online.
Mhm.
Just like how almost like, talking about the work as you're doing it is kind of cool to just see who the cheerleaders are and keep you going. Because writing and creating anything is a very lonely process.
Correct. It is.
So here's something fun for like just a different segue because for all the listeners at home, when Shimon and I met with HTC Elevate, which was HTC's VIP brand advocate community, um, we actually met in India. We have met.
It
That was
was,
such a beautiful trip.
yeah, that was really wonderful.
So, oh, that was such a crazy 72 hours. I had a broken foot at the time. Nobody knew that. I didn't either. But that's not what I was going to say. So, something that's really cool about being part of a device community is the fact that people have obviously multiple devices. So, one of the things that I loved, and I even still talk about this now, that I had the best job in the world with Elevate,
Mhm.
where I got to travel the world and meet our fans in person. And the best part that always happened during those meetups is that at one point in the night, everyone would bring their collections.
Yes, I still have that video.
Yeah, what was that? Yeah, and it was just it's a beautiful thing because it's just like, you all have something in common, which is these devices, and so you want to show it off. So the cool thing about when I was working in Japan with Philip Morris, building community for IQOS, which is their reduced risk tobacco products, so cigarette alternatives, is that we had upper echelon of fans as well. And so we had a couple of dinners once a year where it was very traditional, like, end of year kind of dinner with our top followers, because the community there was Instagram. And again, the magic happened where there was one moment during dinner, I think there were 7 of guests there, and it was me and my colleague, and all of a sudden on the table were 30 IQOS devices, all special editions, different cases, different customizations, and my heart just glowed. I took photos. It was beautiful. It was such a great moment. Oh, I love those. So always have multiple phones in your drawer, always.
Well, I must say, this has been a really amazing conversation, don't you think? I mean, I'm not forcing you to
And
say
this has
that,
been
but
great. I'm having a great time. And I was like, oh yeah, we're totally at the top of the hour.
yeah,
Cool.
time literally flows by when you're having fun, doesn't it?
It does. And it's so great to just see you in real life and not on the internet.
Yeah.
Um,
Although this
well,
is
you
the
are on the
internet,
internet.
yeah. We need to meet
Well,
once this whole pandemic is over.
so let's pick a country. Where are we gonna go?
Hmm. I mean, I'm gonna leave the whole itinerary thing to you because I'm a terrible
Okay,
planner when it comes to this. I'm
I'm
great
ready.
at following
I'll figure it out.
itinerary, but creating one, no thanks.
I can be a founder when it comes to travel. I'm great at that. That's one of my, yeah, I'm fabulous at that.
That's one of the reasons why our vacation was pre-planned one. Not like we
Mhm.
just arrived there and like, okay, now we're going to move somewhere else. No, we had an absolutely pre-planned itinerary. So that's one of the reasons I couldn't meet Darren as well. Um, we tried, but it didn't happen. At least I got to ride the Lime
Oh.
scooter. That was fucking amazing. Ah, I miss it. It's really good.
I did that in Milan in October, and I didn't realize that you don't if you floor it, the button on the
Yeah,
handrails,
yeah.
it doesn't go anywhere. So like there were like cops who were like, "Keep going, go, go," and I'm like, "What?" And finally, I just thought my battery was dead.
But it was fun.
So I'm sorry, you had a final question. I totally interrupted you.
No, no, that's fine. So I was just saying, like, Laura, where can people find you on the internet?
The good old World Wide Web. Well, you can find my embarrassingly outdated blog at lamiki.com, Lamiki.com. But really, I'm more active on Instagram under the alias Cheeky Lamiki, CheekyLamiki. And then also on Twitter, I still have a very warm spot for Twitter, and that's just at Lamiki. Yeah, so those are the places I play the most on these days.
That is sweet. I must say, this was a really fun conversation, and we should catch up more often.
Thank you, Shimon. This was so lovely,
This
and
this
I had a
literally
great time.
we are meeting after like
Hmm.
3 4 years, I guess, because the last time we met was literally when you were in India, wasn't it?
2015, dude.
Shit.
2015. I was like, it was such an effort to get that visa, and then it was a 3-year visa, and then I changed my goddamn name. So I was like, "Fuck, all right, can't go to India again." No, I would love to go back to India. That was on one of my
Bucket lists.
best, yeah, one of my best friends from in Japan. He's from India. Of course, I can't remember where. That's embarrassing, but it's fine. And so one drunken night, we were coming up with a list of different places to travel in the world. But and I just want to see more of India than just Pune for 72 hours on a very tight itinerary
While
and
being
a cricket
jet
match.
lagged.
Oh my God. And then I had a stress fracture in my foot. So I just thought
Oof.
my foot was swollen from traveling for oh God, like 20 hours. Oh, I
20.
was only there for 72. Yeah, because
Wow.
I was coming from Seattle
Mm-hmm.
via Amsterdam to Delhi to Pune
Oof.
for 3 days. That was such an incredible trip. I'm so thankful for that. So
Seriously.
thankful that we all got to meet, that we got to have that time. Just like,
It was hectic,
4
but
a.m., all of
fun.
us in somebody's room.
We
Like,
didn't
how
sleep for
many?
three days. We literally didn't sleep for 3 days.
I slept a little bit because since I was the only woman on that trip, I had a suite to myself. It was the best. It was the only time that being the token woman was great, which I know that wasn't the intention.
But well, it was fun. Visas are always pain in the ass. Like I remember when I had to
Mhm.
travel for U11 to Taiwan. Ah, as awesome
Mm,
as that opportunity was, getting the visa and everything, oof, I hate it. But it was fun.
mhm. Yeah, I've learned more about like entry visas with like now residency visas and stuff. Like there was so much that I didn't know about the world when I was at Elevate because from just not, you know, visas, living abroad, travel, all this stuff. And yeah, it's interesting. Well, thank you, Shimon, for inviting me. This was so lovely and
Thank
wonderful.
you for joining. This was really, really nice conversation, and it was great. It's always great catching up with you.
Always great catching up with you. Well, I will see you on the internet where we can find more reasons that it'll be Shimon's fault.
Yeah, as always, it's always my fault. That's the only
Always your fault.
that's the only constant in life, isn't it?
It is. It is.
And that's it, folks. That's all for this episode. I hope you liked it. And if you did, like, share, subscribe, do your thing. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me or Laura. I'll have our usernames down in the description box below in the show notes. As always, stay safe, take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.